Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to our class of 2022, our senior class of 2022 down here in the McLeod Innovation Center. Thanks for being here today, and welcome to all those watching in classrooms and watching at home today. We thank you very much for being here and for joining us for our annual Veterans Day Assembly. We're going to start off our event here with our president, Mr. Christian Cashman.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. D. Greetings, Fairfield Prep, on this Veterans Day 2021. We gather today in profound gratitude and humility and respect as a prep community to honor all those who have served our nation, and most especially our prep alumni who have served and who serve. My role today is simply to offer a brief thanks and say a word about our Jesuit tradition of service. First, thanks. Thanks to Miss Ashley Woodworth, Mr. D, Mr. Moritz, Fathers Perry and Consman, our prep tech crew, and our team who worked so hard to make this day possible. Let's thank them. To our special guest, prep graduate Rob King, Prep 97, a proud prep dad of Henry 25, our sincere gratitude and admiration to you for your service in the U.S. Army as an officer, but most of all for being a prep brother here today and representing all prep brothers. Thank you. And finally, to all men and women who have served our nation in uniform, those men and women who number like the stars over generations, who defended our sacred principles of liberty and freedom and justice, many of whom have made the greatest sacrifice. We offer our profound thanks. Thank you to all those who have served. At Prep, we know well our call to service, right? Men and women for others is in our DNA from the first days of Jesuit education. It's essential to our way of proceeding. And there's perhaps no greater example of service than the selfless act of service to our nation. It is a tradition that, in fact, reaches back all the way in ancient traditions of Jesuit education to St. Ignatius himself, who you know was a soldier for Spain and became a warrior for Christ. I think of my own Jesuit brother and friend, our 16th president, Father Tom Samiski, who served in the U.S. Marine Corps. I think especially of the generations of prep men who have made the greatest sacrifice since 1943 to some of the incredible young men who I taught myself in Berkman's 103. Mr. Moritz will offer a deeper reflection on this morning, but I have a photograph here today for the class of 1943. Just advance this. There we go. There it is. This photo includes senior Stephen Moran in uniform, class of 1943, who headed off to serve in the Second World War. But what is not pictured, gentlemen, in this photograph are the three seniors who had already departed to serve in the military before graduation. Prep brothers Asman, Ayers, and McIndoe, class of 43. It should give us pause today to consider the prep brothers and those who served in the Jesuit Ignatian heritage we have all come to claim our own. Men who, before they became soldiers and officers, were formed here as leaders in our way of proceeding, men of conscience, intellectual competence, and compassion. We can never fully comprehend the degree of their sacrifice, nor adequately thank them, our brothers in uniform. But today, we will do our level best to honor them in prayer, reflection, and action. May the spirit of Ignatius and his Savior, Christ the King, inspire us today. And may we never forget our prep brothers and all men and women who have served the cause of freedom and liberty to the greater glory of God. Thank you, and hail all veterans of Fairfield Prep. God bless.
I'd like to welcome now to set our context for our event here, Mr. Rudy Moritz from the class of 1994, the chairperson of our Social Studies Department.
Thank you, gentlemen, for the warm welcome. Thank you, Mr. Cashman, Mr. D, and a special thanks to Ms. Woodworth and Mr. Sather, who the three of us sat down and threw around ideas for this day. And again, a special thanks to Ms. Julie Pollard for helping us out in getting this day going. And a special thanks to our guest, Mr. Robert King, class of '97. In June of 1914, the assassination of Archduke Francis Ferdinand of Austria ignited the most destructive international conflict the world had known. The war was fought in Europe, North Africa, and Eurasia. It involved 16 countries, which had mobilized over 65 million men over a 4-year period. The United States formally joined the Allies when Congress declared war on Germany on April 4, 1917. Members of the American Expeditionary Force made their way to the battlefields of France in June of 1918. The United States had mobilized 4.7 million men to fight in World War I. 2.8 million were drafted into the military. The remaining 1.9 million had volunteered. 53,402 American soldiers died during the war. Overall, between the Allied and Central Powers, there were over 37 million casualties. 8.5 million were killed in the conflict, which was known at the time as the Great War. The Great War officially ended when the Treaty of Versailles was signed on June 28, 1919. However, the fighting ceased 7 months earlier when an armistice between the Allied nations and Germany went into effect on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. For that reason, November 11, 1918 is generally regarded as the end of the war to end all wars. When word spread throughout Europe that the fighting had ceased, people spilled into the streets and celebrated. And to this day, peoples and nations around the world continue to commemorate the event as either Armistice or Remembrance Day. In November 1919, President Wilson proclaimed November 11 as the first commemoration of Armistice Day with the following words: "To us in America, the reflections of Armistice Day will be filled with solemn pride in the heroism of those who died in the country's service, and with gratitude for the victory, both because of the thing from which it has freed us and because of the opportunity it has given America to show her sympathy with peace and justice in the councils of the nations." During the 1920s, many states had already declared 11 November as a holiday, and on 13 May 1938, Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed into law a statute making the 11th of November in each year a legal holiday, a day to be dedicated to the cause of world peace and to be thereafter celebrated and known as Armistice Day. It was a day primarily set aside to honor veterans of World War I. But in 1954, after World War II had required the greatest mobilization of soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen in the nation's history, and after American forces had fought aggression in Korea, the 83rd Congress, at the urging of the veterans service organizations, amended the Act of 1938 by striking out the word armistice and inserting in its place the words veterans. With the approval of the legislation, on June 1st, 1954, November 11th became a day to honor American veterans of all wars. So who are our veterans? Who are those in active service? They are the barber who landed on Omaha Beach on D-Day, a grandfather who fought in North Africa and then in Italy, a grandfather who served in the Merchant Marines and the Army Air Corps, a priest and professor who fought in Europe and told a group of college freshmen that it took being in a foxhole for him to find God, a golfing buddy who earned his U.S. citizenship and a Purple Heart in the jungles of Vietnam, an uncle who in his late 40s was called in by the Air Force to fly missions from Germany to Baghdad during the Iraq War, the social studies teacher who wowed you with his knowledge of just about anything, a former student who worked in a team removing IEDs in Afghanistan. Our veterans are doctors and lawyers, business people and teachers. They are the sons and daughters. They are sons-in-law and daughters-in-law, and of course, moms and dads. We see them around town. The older ones wear hats, which let us know the ship they served on or the war they participated in. The millions of men and women who we honor today have served this country in many capacities, in peacetime and during periods of conflict. They have served our country and the world by rooting out evil, making the world safe for democracy, and they have made our lives a bit easier by making sure the world's sea lanes are open for commerce. They've been called on to deliver humanitarian aid to those in need all over the world, and have been called to aid Americans when natural disaster strikes. These men and women have sacrificed time with family and friends to make the world a safer place, to protect the liberties we hold most dear. Their service has played an integral role in allowing us to pursue our happiness every day, even right here at Fairfield Prep. So we are here today to honor those who have served in the United States Armed Services. We are here today because our story, our Fairfield Prep story, is intertwined in the events of the 1940s. So let's take a step back. World War II starts in 1939, and the United States announced its formal entrance into the war in December of 1941. 9 months later, in September 1942, Fairfield Prep opened its doors to 319 students, 11 of which were seniors and 3 postgraduate students. It was a precarious time. The world was at war. The effects of the Great Depression were still being felt. The United States government needed to mobilize an effort to do its part to save the world from fascism and totalitarianism and keep its constitutional commitment to protect its citizenry. And like it had during World War I, the United States government would call on its citizens to make great sacrifices. By the spring of 1943, 2 Jesuit instructors had been called to serve as chaplains in the United States Merchant Marine, and 6 Fairfield Prep students were now serving in the United States military. Prep students ran scrap metal drives, the Jesuit community had a victory garden, and raised their own pigs and chickens to feed themselves. In May of 1943, Fairfield Prep students led a drive for war bonds and stamps, raising $5,200. In 2021, that would be the equivalent of $83,000. They did it in 9 days in support of the war effort. Consider this. In the fall of '43, a prep senior and one of the standout players on the football team left school in the middle of the season for the Marine Corps. From the very beginning, for 79 years, Fairfield Prep men and women have been serving their communities and their country in a variety of ways. During our 79-year history, 224 Fairfield Prep graduates have gone on to serve in the United States Armed Forces. 62 graduating classes have had at least one member go on to serve in the military. We at Fairfield Prep are very proud of this commitment to service and to country our graduates have practiced during these 79 years. So on this Veterans Day, 11 November 2021, a day of remembrance, a day of thanksgiving, a day to honor our veterans, we have to ask, what is the most fitting way to honor our veterans? Without a major mobilization effort to engage in, with no war bonds to purchase or scrap metal drives to organize, what can we do? Well, we can crush the drives we have, like the Great Ignatian Challenge. We can give generously to our Mite Box fundraisers, especially the current one for Catch a Lift. We could donate our time and treasure to any number of veterans organizations. When we see a veteran or a person in uniform, we can acknowledge them and thank them for their commitment to our country. We can honor our veterans by living our Jesuit mission, by giving of ourselves in the most authentic of ways, by taking advantage of the opportunities to share our talents so our communities, our country, our world can be a place where all are able to pursue their happiness. We at Fairfield Prep have been committed to this mission for 79 years, and God willing, we'll be engaged in this mission for many more. To our veterans, we say thank you. May God bless you and your families, and may God bless Fairfield Prep.
Mr. Moritz, thank you for that great start, talking about our history as a country, but more importantly as an institution. Thank you. Our keynote speaker today is an alum from the class of 1997. Bob King was born in 1979 in Norwalk, Connecticut. A graduate of the class of 1997, Bob graduated from Providence College in May of 2001 and received a U.S. Army Officer Commission as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army Engineer Corps. Selected for reserve duty, his first assignment was as a platoon leader in the 861st Engineer Company, Rhode Island National Guard. While working in Boston, he volunteered for a deployment to Operation Enduring Freedom and was assigned to the 115th Military Police Company. First assigned to Headquarters Platoon for 2 months, he was then ordered to take command of the 2nd Platoon of the 115th Military Police Company while in Iraq. Lieutenant King held this position for 12 months, conducting missions in Iraq. Upon returning to the U.S., Lieutenant King was promoted to captain and selected as the company commander for the 861st Engineer Company of the Rhode Island National Guard. Captain King served in this role for 3 years, and in May of 2009, completed his service obligation. Captain King's military education includes U.S. Army Airborne School, Air Assault School, and the Engineer Officer Basic Course. His awards and decorations include the Valorous Unit Award, Meritorious Service Medal, Army Commendation Medal, Army Achievement Medal, National Defense Service Medal, Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary Medal, Global War on Terror Service Medal, Armed Forces Reserve Medal, Airborne Badge, Air Assault Badge, Gold Combat Spurs, and Combat Action Badge. Bob holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Providence College and a Master's of Business Administration from Norwich University. Mr. King is the Vice President of Operations at King Industries in Norwalk, Connecticut. Bob currently resides in Fairfield and is married to his lovely wife, Molly, and is the proud father of Henry King, member of Fairfield Prep's class of 2025, and Annabelle King. Mr. King, we welcome you.
Thank you for that warm welcome, Mr. D. It's quite an honor to be here. Prep certainly gave me the foundations and set me up for success in my life. I've been in your shoes. I put my shoes on the same way that I put my shoes on the same way you put yours on this morning. I walked in these same halls. In my prep career, I played football for 4 years. I am vertically challenged, so I played left bench. But I loved being part of a team. I loved being part of a group. My freshman year, after freshman year football, my coach came up to me and said, hey, and this guy was an English teacher, watch out for them. He goes, hey, King, you know, you're Husky. You should try out for rugby. And I go, oh, okay, that's a compliment, that's good. So I found out later, as I went in my experience in life, Husky meant short and chubby. And so that was me freshman year coming into prep. But over time, I've come to gain my own confidence, gain my own resiliency, being open to growth, being challenged, and achieving distinction during my time here at prep. The intent of my visit today is to share my story. And just as everybody here has said today, this is just my story. And my prep brothers that have gone before me, came after me, they have done far more than I have. And I just wanted to let you know that this is just my story. Everybody's got their own that's done in their service, but it's such a unique thing to have, and it was an honor to serve my country. So hopefully I can work this. So here's my path. Started off at Fairfield Prep. I love prep. It really gave me just such a firm foundation. On top of rugby and football, I also participated in student government and also participated with Xavier High School down in Bronx. My junior year, we did a thing called Kairos Retreat. And then my senior year, I was a student leader for Prep's first Kairos Retreat. And that really hit me because it was just such an impactful thing that really put together the closeness and togetherness that all of you feel at Prep. So I would highly recommend you engage in a Kairos Retreat. So graduated from Fairfield Prep. I had to fight for a 3.0. Some other people and students were gifted. I was not one of them. So I had to work my butt off to get a B average. And luckily, what that did for me was it gave me, it was actually, I always thought it was a curse, but it was actually an opportunity, because the amount of work and effort that I put in really set me up for success when I went to Providence College. So I go to Providence College my first semester, I make the dean's list. And it was just because I worked so hard as I did at prep. It ended up working out well for me. So I've always flirted with the idea of going into the Army. My father was a platoon leader, a tank platoon leader, and he was stationed in Korea as a tank platoon leader. And I met veterans throughout my life, and I always have known them to be solid people. They've helped out others, they served their community, and it was a model that I wanted to mimic. So I knew that was a path that I was going to go down. So I entered into the Providence College ROTC program, and what that stands for is Reserve Officer Training Corps. And what it consists of is basically 4 years where you go to formation 3 to 4 times a week at 0600 in the morning. So for a college kid, that is early. But what it did was it kept me out of trouble, but it also opened me up to what a leader is, what a leader shouldn't be, how leaders should go about and engaging in that. And the purpose of the ROTC program is to set you up for success for ultimately taking charge of a platoon. And what a platoon is basically 3 to 4 squads. And a squad consists of about 9 to 10 soldiers. And that's throughout the Army, whether you're in the infantry, whether you're in the combat engineers, civil affairs units, field artillery. That's kind of a common military structure. So as a 21-year-old kid, 22-year-old kid coming out of Providence College, that was the responsibility that I was charged with, to eventually take over a platoon. So, and keep in mind, this is May of 2001. So my plan was, I got selected for reserve force duty, so I said, hey, okay, my plan is I'm going to serve in the National Guard. I'm going to do my 4 to 8 years. There are no wars going on. I'm going to get out soon. I'm going to have this on my resume, and I'm going to have an outstanding civilian career working hard. So graduate and get my commission as a U.S. Army officer in May of 2001. After you get your commission, you get assigned a date to go to your officer basic course, which for me was in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and it was in October of 2001. So what did I do? I thought it was a good idea to move to Martha's Vineyard with my roommates. We all just graduated college. I mowed lawns, I sold sunglasses at night, and I delivered patio furniture just to pay for my rent. It was an awesome summer, and I had a great time. So I come home, and the Army starts paying you about a month before you hit your officer basic course. So I had money coming in. And so what do you do when you have money coming in and you're young and dumb and you're 22 years old? You go and buy a car. So I go to buy my first car, and I'm at Toyota in Westport, Connecticut, and the guy who's selling it to me is a Vietnam veteran. And we watched the planes hit, and he turns to me and he goes, "You're going to war." And for me, it was one of these things where it was one of those moments where you can't describe it, but it's one of those things, and I tend to call them harmonic gates. And it's where you can remember exactly where you are, exactly what you needed to do, and exactly what you needed to be. And that was one of those moments for me. So get my car, and I'm going, okay, well, I signed up for this. I got to go drive out to Fort Leonard Wood and find out that there's the U.S. Army has kids from all over the country that completed ROTC that are coming in at the same time. And for me, it kind of cooled me down a little bit because there was other people that were going to be walking in my same shoes. And talk about a brotherhood here. serving with other people like that, knowing the challenges that we're going to face, that's a brotherhood too as well. Plus, the other thing, they bring us into the in-brief and they said, okay, look around you. Look to your left and to your right. The people to your left and to your right might not be here. And again, that was one of those moments where definitely have to take this seriously and take care of business. So, Engineer Officer Basic course was incredibly fun. I learned how to build stuff, and I learned how to blow it up. I learned all sorts of explosive devices, demolition charges, C4, dynamite, shape charges, detonation cord, blasting caps. It was fun, so much fun. So I really loved it. Let's see what's next. So over the course of my time in ROTC and Engineer Basic course, I was curious all the time, what is good leadership? And in the Army, sometimes you can see good leadership. You can also see some bad leadership. And I was curious in finding out what exactly is it. And I would like to read, so I found some of the, one of the best leadership principles that I came across, and I read it when I was in college. It was a book called Band of Brothers by Stephen Ambrose. And one of the leaders that he portrays is Major Dick Winters, who started off as a platoon leader in World War II and then made it all the way to Lieutenant Colonel, Major. And he put together later in his life, when he was an adjunct professor at West Point, the 10 points of leadership. And I'll read them to you, and not that I'll go into them in detail, but just think about them as the days, weeks, and months go on. Strive to be a leader of character, competence, and courage. Lead from the front. Say, follow me, and lead the way. Stay in top physical shape. Physical stamina is the root of mental toughness. Develop your team if you know your people and are fair in setting realistic goals and expectations. Lead by example. You will develop teamwork. Delegate responsibility to your subordinates and let them do their jobs. You can't do a good job if you don't have a chance to use your own imagination and creativity. Anticipate problems and prepare to overcome obstacles. Don't wait until you get to the top of the ridge until you make up your mind. Remain humble. Don't worry about who receives the credit. Never let power or authority go to your head. Take a moment of self-reflection. Look at yourself in the mirror every night and ask yourself, did you do your best? True satisfaction comes from getting the job done. The key to a successful leader is to earn respect, not because of rank or position, but because you are a leader of character. Hang tough. Never give up. So my plan didn't go according to plan. So I was working in Boston, and I had just come off this high of life where I'm learning to blow stuff up, doing really cool, fun stuff in the Army. And I get a job as a corporate insurance broker representative. Boring. So one day I'm at my desk and I get a call from my company commander, and he says, hey, Lieutenant King, you know this Kuwait possible invasion of Iraq thing? Yeah, I know about it. What's going on? Well, we need volunteers. And I take a step back and I look at my cubicle. I just got off a phone call with somebody yelling at me. So yeah, I'll go. And I volunteer to go, and I figured I'm single at this point in my life. I might as well just do it. So I go to get my orders, and I'm a combat engineer officer, and I get my orders from the Army, and they say, hey, you're going to be a platoon leader with the 115th Military Police Company. I'm going, whoa, wait a second, I am an engineer, you need to reassign me. Nope, we need people, go. So I head down to the unit, and I get assigned as the headquarters platoon leader. And basically what that is where I was in charge of making sure the company had ammunition had the right vehicles, had the right equipment, had uniforms, had food, making sure that all of our unit vehicles were serviced, as well as our communications. So for me, it was really an opportunity to learn about what it takes to run an organization from behind the scenes. So we train in Fort Drum, we go to Kuwait, and then we move out to Iraq, and we get to Baghdad International Airport in the beginning of May. And the best way to describe it is if anybody's been to a major airport, just throwing a bunch of Army guys with a bunch of guns and everything like that, and this is kind of what happens. So my first assignment, headquarters platoon leader, I had to spend about $10,000 a week in the Iraqi economy, buying things like air conditioners, refrigerators, screens, windows, anything to help make my unit and other units in my battalion work. So I had to go out in the city of Baghdad, and it was an interesting time because when the kids were around, you knew you were okay. But you knew when people or kids were not around, something could happen. And thankfully, during this time, everything was relatively peaceful in that time period. So I get back to my unit, and there's rumors going around that we might be going to this place called Al-Fallujah, Iraq, out to the west of Baghdad. And there were some units there that were haven't needed help. We were there we got assigned to linked up first with the 101st Airborne Division, and then with the 3rd Infantry Division, and then ultimately with the 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment. And let me see if this laser works. Right over here was the Ba'ath Party headquarters vacation spot. So Saddam Hussein had made a vacation area with his own lake and everything, so he made it back over here, but it was actually a huge compound. So me and my platoon, we had actually a lake front house. It was a dried up lake. It wasn't anything glorious. But we ran missions out of there morning, noon, and night, and we would travel mostly in Fallujah, and our missions consisted of cordon and searches, knock and talks, checkpoint security. And at this point in time, the operational tempo, the amount of missions that we did day after day was getting pretty high. And at that time, one of the platoon leaders had gotten relieved. And I was the headquarters platoon leader, and I was the only one. They said, "Hey, King, take over 2nd platoon." And for me, so here I am, trained for almost 4.5 years to be a platoon leader, never, ever thinking I was going to be in combat. And here I am in one of the most heavily conflicted areas in Iraq at that time as a platoon leader. So I bring my platoon leadership in, which consisted of my squad leaders, my platoon sergeant, and keep in mind I was 23 at the time. And I brought them in and I said, "Hey, look, we're in a tough situation here, but I'm going to demand of you guys to help me out, me delegating to my subordinates. I need you to make sure that your soldiers keep their weapons clean, keep their vehicles ready, keep the vehicles serviceable so that we can go out at any time, make sure their personal equipment is good and ready to go. And oh, by the way, when we go outside the wire, everybody's ready to go, weapons are tight, locked and loaded, paying attention, no one's sleeping. That's how we're going to get through this." And we agreed. And it was a great mix of people. The Army somehow concentrates the diversity of America and squeezes it down. So it was just phenomenal, where my platoon consisted of cops, firefighters, students, carpenters, you name the race and ethnicity, we had it. It was such a great thing. So this is my platoon. The vertically challenged guy all the way to your left, my right, is myself. And one of the things that was interesting for me, we had 10 gun trucks, so that was a whole new way of operating for the Army, but doing it while you're getting shot at, RPG'd or IED'd. And those Humvees, they're thin-skinned Humvees. So for me, I really had to make sure that I came familiar with a term. It was called, I heard someone else say it actually, spiritual fitness. You can have physical fitness, but what's your spiritual fitness? To get up every day knowing that it could be your last, knowing that you could be maimed, knowing that one of your guys or women in your platoon could get hurt. So for me, I would pray every night, and sometimes I would feel guilty because I would fall asleep. But at least I went to bed and got my rest. So this was my platoon. They did some wonderful things. They're all great people, and I'm actually going to see my platoon sergeant and squad leaders next weekend, so I'm really looking forward to that. Some funny stories. This is a few of my, there's two teams there. One of my squad leaders and my platoon sergeants in the middle. So I love this picture because it's not every day that you see such a wide variety of people coming from America sitting on Saddam Hussein's dining room seats. So I love this picture. And that was my hooch in the back there. So this is me on one of my missions. For some reason, there was a guy following us with a camera around. We were actually the first National Guard unit to really be used as, active duty, attached to active duty units. So the Pentagon figured it'd be a good thing to profile. So that's me in the front. That's my radio transmission officer in back of me. And then that's my translator, a gentleman by the name of Sargon Yalda. And we were called the Three Musketeers just because we were always moving around together. The pictures on your right, that's me when I got promoted to first lieutenant. And it was interesting because organizations take on the personality of their leaders. I didn't think it was true, but I really like to work hard. I like to play hard. We had a healthy banter that in those days when, you're going hard, people were getting wounded, it was a really tough time, you had to have a healthy level of humor. And so my platoon sergeant didn't miss an opportunity, so he says, hey, you should get a picture in front of your platoon sign with your newly promoted self. Great. So I get up there, I'm smiling, and as I'm taking the picture, a bucket of water gets dumped on me. And I just loved it, and I thanked him for it for this day. Another funny story during this time, as I moved out to Fallujah, it was a tough place, so I said, geez, this is big. And at the time at Providence College, I was dating my wife, Molly, and we broke up. We became friends, and we used to still talk to each other, but when I moved out to Fallujah, I wrote her a note and said, hey, I want to get back together with you. We had such a good thing. I think we should be together. So I send the note off. I go to Fallujah, and I get the opportunity to call her. And I call her, and she picks up, hey, how are you? And the first thing she says was, did you get my note? And I said, what do you mean your note? Did you get my note? And she proceeded to say, I've been thinking about you a lot. I want to get back together with you. And so we kept our letters ever since. And she was really an anchor of strength for me during my time there. Kind of typical missions in Iraq. I was 23 years old, running around Fallujah with a radio headset, Bradley tanks around me, talking and walking to them, and having air assets up above. And again, it was one of those times where I thought to myself in the middle of the street in Fallujah going, what the hell am I doing? 2 years ago, I was an irresponsible college kid, and now here I am leading missions, talking to helicopters, going with Bradley tanks. And again, it was one of those harmonic gates. Again, some of the other missions that we did. This day was, we found a huge weapons cache that was buried in kind of a residential area. And we went in there at night, and then we found it, and then these are kind of just some pictures we had of the results. So it was nice to get weapons, demolitions, explosives in our hands because it meant it couldn't be used against us. This is another picture of those raids. This is Staff Sergeant Joe Camara and Sergeant Charles Caldwell. They were great. They always helped me out. They weren't in my platoon, but they were just really dependable people. Sergeant Camara was a New Bedford police officer, and Sergeant Caldwell worked at Fidelity Investments in Boston. And about 2 months after this picture, they were killed in an IED attack. And about a month later, another soldier in our unit had passed away due to a vehicular accident. So again, it didn't happen in my platoon, but it re-strengthened our efforts to really keep everybody on their toes and, again, strengthen our brotherhood as warriors engaged in combat. Towards the end of our time in Fallujah, my platoon sergeant and I took a picture together, so that was nice. And then while I was up in Balad, Iraq, which is in northern Iraq, I ran into my college roommate, who was also serving in the Army as well. And can't tell you how nice it was to exchange some stories with him and just hang out with him for a few hours. And by the way, that picture is up in Colony Pizza, by the way. My wife put it up there. So my time as a platoon leader in Fallujah and Balad, Iraq came to an end. I came home and basically took over the 861st Engineer Company. And basically what a company consists of is 4 platoons. So I had about 140 soldiers, all sorts of construction equipment, and a lot of these guys had just gotten back from their deployment. And so the best way I thought to keep them engaged is to keep them with very good training. So each year we'd pick something, or I would have to pick something to go do to get these guys stick time and good training. So we went out to the Mexican border. This was taken, that mountain over there is one of the mountains in Tijuana, and we would go over there, repair the roads, and make it more navigable for the Border Patrol. So for me, I can't tell you how much prep set me up for success. Sometimes you can see the challenges that you face, whether it's you feel weak in one area, strong in another. Your buddies may be getting into really good schools, you may not, that type of thing. The world's made up of challenges and opportunities, and sometimes they're intermixed. But the difference is when you keep your head up, when you keep your heart open, and you keep your mind strong, that's going to lead you to a way to make a difference and make a positive impact. And ultimately, I got, after I did my time as a commander, I got out of the Army. I was going to, Molly and I, we had our first child, which is Henry, and we were starting a family. I was starting my MBA program, and I figured it was a good time to get out. And I struggled with it for a bit, but ultimately, I knew that it was the right thing to do, and I had done more than others, and I had done my part. And after I got out, I learned probably about 2 years later that my driver and my mechanic had killed themselves. So it was tough for me to see that, and I felt guilty, but ultimately I knew that it was a mental health issue. We had gone through a lot over there, and for me, when I got back, I sought that out, and I talked to a VA professional, and they had really helped me. And what I did was I called my platoon sergeant and said, hey, we need to talk about this to our old platoon. And it was really good because it wasn't a sign of weakness, it was a sign of strength. And I'll never know this, but what I do know is that you know, you never know if you could have saved somebody through that. So that was just really, and what I found through that is that it's okay to talk about that sort of stuff. It's okay to say there's a mental health issue. And it makes you stronger. There's post-traumatic stress disorder, and there's also post-traumatic success. And I feel that if you talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, you can have post-traumatic success. So for me, that's one of the last pieces of advice for me is as you go about your day, keep in mind that those types of things do happen out there. Always keep it in mind if you are talking to a veteran. But also remember that they're proud of their service. Looking at each and every one of you today, I'm happy I served, and I would do it again in a second. So in closing, no matter what life throws at you, challenges or opportunities, keep your head up, keep your heart strong, and your mind open. Live the prep ethos every day. Hang tough, and never, ever give up. Go prep. All right, sit down. You got to get back to class. Thanks again, everybody, for having me. I really love my time here. And in your days today, say hello to Henry King. Also, please say hello to my nephew, Alex Leparati. Take care.
Bob, again, thank you for your words, your story, but most importantly, your service, your leadership, and your example to all of our prep students here on how to be a man for others. So thank you very much. Thank you. At this moment, we'd like to play a short message from a member of our community. A member of our community who is very familiar, especially to our juniors and seniors, our former president, Father Tom Smiski, coming to us from Siberia.
Hey, Fairfield Prep, Father Tom Smiski here. Some of you know me as the former president of Fairfield Prep, and now I'm president of a little Jesuit school in Tomsk, Russia. Basically, I'm calling in from the middle of Siberia right now to wish you all a wonderful Veterans Day. Thank you all for honoring our nation's veterans. I'm certainly proud of my service as a Marine artillery officer a long time ago, which has served me well over the years. Taught me a lot about leadership, about being sent on mission, the ability to serve at any climate and place, and to be willing to sacrifice yourself for the greater good. So on this day of honoring veterans, we give thanks for all that service and for all that you're learning at Fairfield Prep. So Fairfield Prep, greetings from Siberia. Semper Fidelis, go prep.
I'd like to welcome Father Ron Perry, our student chaplain, to offer a moment of silence.
$1,355,000, the number of U.S. military deaths from the American Revolutionary War to the war in Afghanistan. 1,500,000, the number of U.S. military personnel wounded in battle from the American Revolutionary War to the war in Afghanistan. a total of over 2,850,000 U.S. military casualties over the course of our history. Men and women killed or wounded fighting for our country so that we might continue to live in freedom and enjoy the rights and privileges we can so easily take for granted. They fought and shed their blood so that we don't have to. In gratitude for the sacrifice of so many for us, let's take a moment of silent prayer and thanksgiving for those who sacrificed so much for us and for those who continue to serve our country in the military. Let's take a moment. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Father Perry. So, gentlemen, you've heard a lot today. We heard a lot about our Fairfield Prep brothers back at the start of Prep. Mr. Morris gave us a great perspective about American history as well as the Fairfield Prep history. And Mr. King, a Prep graduate, shared his incredible story of service. Now we turn to action. So after our closing prayer today, your teachers in your classroom will be distributing a few pieces of paper for you to write letters to current veterans to thank them for their service to our country and to our community. As St. Ignatius taught us, we must always, in everything that we do, always offer gratitude. So now is your chance to offer your thanks. These letters that you write to our veterans today should authentically address your themes of gratitude and thankfulness for their sacrifices, for their service, for their leadership. And later today, these letters will be taken to the Homes for the Brave, a local organization that provides transitional housing for former servicemen and women, and will be delivered to the veterans there. We thank you very much for your participation in this meaningful action, and after our closing prayer, we'll begin that in your classrooms, and our seniors here will head back to your classrooms to start that process as well. So thank you. We'll close today with a closing prayer by Father Brian Konsman.
Brothers, let us pray. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Father in heaven, we come before you today in gratitude. Gratitude for this great nation. Gratitude for the principles on which it was founded. And gratitude for those who have risked their lives to defend those principles. We ask that you bless all those who are currently serving in our armed forces. Keep them safe and strong in their honor. We implore you to bless all those who have served. Grant them a long and peaceful life for the sacrifices they have made. We beseech not least that you bless all those who have laid down their lives in service to God and country. Welcome them into the light of your face. May the same spirit of fortitude you have given so many men and women take residence in our hearts, that, regardless of whether we follow them in the same path, we might honor them in our very selves. Through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, God, forever and ever. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
So before we close today, I'd just like to ask Mr. King to come forward again for a little thank you gift from Prep. So thank you very much. And there was one piece of Mr. King's story that was especially important. And last Friday, we welcomed back 22 students who went on their Kairos retreat. So Bob had mentioned that he was part of the first Kairos retreat here. So all of us here in the room who have experienced a Kairos here at Prep, we owe a debt of gratitude to Mr. King. So thank you very much. And to really commemorate that, I'd like to welcome Mr. Eli Gualtieri, our Director of Campus Ministry and coordinator of our Kairos program for a special gift for you.
So Bob, I know you were part of that first retreat back in 1996, in that 96-97 year. And so again, we welcomed back our 72nd Kairos group last week. And so as a gift, and I'd invite our Kairos alums to please stand. So we have I'm going to present you with our Kairos cross, our Kairos Live the Fourth sticker, and our Kairos vest. Oh, wow. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Well, again, thank you very much for joining us here today, McLeod, in Fairfield Prep and at home. We thank you very much. And again, Mr. King, thank you very much for being with us today. Thank you so much. So at this point, our seniors can head back to class to start their letter writing, and then in the classrooms we can begin our letter writing. Thank you so much.